Hi, I'm Amogh Matthews, and I hate it here. Last week, every television network held a surprise election run of The Bachelorette as two old white guys vied for the affection of a nation on the brink of collapse. I watched the whole thing, and it kept me up for days as I theorized with every news anchor about what the ending was going to be. Who would get Georgia's rose? Would Pennsylvania betray her lover for a past lover? Can one Nebraskan farmer really make a difference? As with every run of The Bachelorette, the fans can get pretty passionate about their favorite man. So naturally, businesses across the country boarded up their windows because someone's going to riot. It's really just a matter of it's people fighting for their rights or fighting to take those rights away. The problem is, everyone's ready to riot, but they've got this guy who's counting the ballots in every important state. Counting. It's the one thing Emerson students and Republicans both dislike. In fact, Trump's tantrum of the week revolved around the very subject. The slow counting in some of these swing states made me think it must either be a Trump supporter or a toddler in charge. His whole hashtag Stop the Counting is based on the idea that votes shouldn't be counted, which is, in case you're confused, what an election means. Donald, I hope you know that if they stopped counting votes when you asked them to, you would still lose. Didn't little Donnie learn that good things happen to those who wait, or in this case, the same thing that happens to those who wait? Now, we talked a little last week about the Electoral College, and I'm not really a fan, but it does give some states the attention they never get from their parents. The middle child states, if you will. 51 weeks of the year, no one gives a shit about Nevada unless it's like a group of white moms hitting up Vegas to celebrate their 20th, 21st birthday. But this election week, Nevada let her hair down and took off her glasses, and all the popular states realized that she was actually pretty beautiful. I've personally thought about Nevada more this week than the entire rest of my life combined. The apocalyptic state of this country is throwing everyone for a loop, unless you're a reasonableist from the planet Zorp. This election started out bleak, with Florida almost flipping, because Twitter and myself collectively reached for our liquor cabinets. Not that I have one in the W.
Increasingly difficult for Democrats to win in statewide. So I think the Biden, you can feel the hopes and the dreams of our viewers falling down, and you can hear liquor cabinets opening all across this great land.
For those of you that played a drinking game on election night, I really hope you didn't actually take a shot every time they say the vote was too close to call. If you did, please ask, why are they showing EIV at the hospital? I'm with that. As big of a night as this was for America, it was an even bigger night for John King, who tried to set a new record for the longest time standing up, taking the spot of all the black people that tried to vote in Texas. But he could never beat legend Steve Kornacki, who sources say is still chained to the Kornacki cam. I hope Anderson Cooper gives them both a nice foot massage. If not Steve Kornacki, I'd love to do it. He pulled out all the stops, going into crazy hypotheticals, like my overthinking ex. You see, Anderson, if Trump takes Michigan and then Biden takes one district in Nebraska, then now we own Canada. Boom! It was a big night for map-touching news guys everywhere. So big that some people even took to reporting on them instead of the election.
Now over here, this screen-touching map guy, he could touch Nebraska, or maybe he doesn't. We don't really know yet. We do have an idea where his hand is going to head. Probably somewhere on that screen. It's really too early to call.
Journalism majors, including myself, can only hope that our tuition will result in such success like Steve Kornacki. John King's mother has never been so proud of her little boy. It was always his dream to touch all of America, and this week, much like my childhood friend who died of cancer, he got his wish. At least he used it on something slightly less stupid than a trip to Disney World. Like really, Rachel, so basic. Make a wish. Okay, I'm about done talking about John King's beautiful hands. Scroll the teleprompter. America, much like my therapist tells me, it's time to move on. Between the spells of depression and the weight gains that I can only assume affected about all of the Emerson's population, you probably found some time to reflect upon yourself. Maybe you even began to reflect upon those around you that are like you, particularly of your own generation. I'm, of course, talking about Generation Z, or Gen Z, or as COVID so aptly call us, Zoomers. Also dubbed the I generation by multiple analysts, we are, of course, the internet and technology natives who have created many things in our very short time here on Earth. Those include making wide-scale social media movements politically viable, furthering discourse on sexuality, and normalizing buying an old iPhone for thousands of dollars just because it has Flappy Bird on it. Yes, us Gen Zers are a little strange, but we all know it. But maybe it isn't totally our fault. In terms of politics, at least, Business Insider stated that Zers often get their motives and preferences from the millennial generation. It makes sense. Millennials are an outspoken generation. Despite being born before the ubiquitousness of the smartphone, they still use the power of social media for good reasons. Arguably, millennials have had one of the toughest eras of coming of age, which saw them endure 2 terms of a Bush presidency and a recession that occurred before many were heading into the job market.
At the time, we thought the Great Recession was a once-in-a-generation, hell, maybe once-in-a-century economic disaster.
As anxious and unsettled as maybe I've ever felt.
How am I gonna make enough to really feel comfortable, or, just to make ends meet at that point?
I just felt really betrayed by the system.
By contrast, we were projected to have it a bit easier. We were supposed to come of age in a halfway decent economy with lower unemployment rates, which begs the question, why are Zers so upset right now? Well, there are a number of reasons. First off, it's very hard to generalize a whole generation of people, and besides, available data into Gen Z in terms of voting politics is actually quite young. Second, we got this little thing called COVID-19, which totally shook the rug out of us Zoomers. According to the Pew Research Center, half of Gen Z teens between the ages of 18 and 23 reported someone in their household losing a job from the pandemic. It's very sad, which should send more shockwaves down your back than getting super liked on Tinder by that sweaty guy from the used car dealership. Both very sad things. The future is totally uncertain as we enter an era not too unlike the mid-2000s, which is going to see a lot of service sector industries entering a strong period of job losses. Though we're the most educated generation, if some major changes in terms of policies or the market fail were to happen, 73% of Zoomers who graduate will have major student debts and will be running into big issues. But if there is some silver lining to any of this, at least from what my grandma tells me, us Gen Zers are PC snowflakes who just love to conform. In other words, most of us are on the same page with all this job and politics stuff, right?
I gotta say is Trump 2020. I look like paying an extra 33 in tax for Biden.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ. Yes, that's right. The anime-loving Neopet generation has a burgeoning right-wing movement, and its population is far more than the cultural behemoth that is Lil Pump. However, don't use the Gucci Gang rapper as a prime example. Despite the fact that these kids' cultural leaders seem to either be nerds like Ben Shapiro or meatheads like Joe Rogan, conservative Gen Zers actually have some pretty unanimously progressive ideas, namely those in the realm of climate change, with only a slim 18% of teen Republicans believing that it has nothing to do with human interactions. But does this forgive teen Republicans from some of their more controversial or borderline evil ideas? No, of course not. But it does beg the question if older Republicans are either going to try and indoctrinate the younger generation with older ideas and attempt to change their views to not have their party phased out or completely overhauled. As Ian Stevens, a 22-year-old Republican and Biden voter stated, quote, "I just think we're going to have more ideological, and we agree that certain things are more important issues, regardless of your partisan identity." Gen Z's beliefs in diversity, equality, and social justice are likely to guide them for decades, pushing the Republican Party to either embrace a more inclusive, possibly libertarian message built around social and economic freedoms, or lose with increasing regularity. Even the Democratic Party has some work to do when it comes to appealing to common Zoomer ideologies. It seems as if Gen Z is unsatisfied with what either party has to offer. So much so that groups and organizations have been formed in an effort to push political agendas that support the resolution of dire political problems. However, neither Democrats or Republicans are in a rush to resolve. Gen Z GOP is an example of one of these, recognizing that while Zoomer population is mostly liberal-leaning, being confined to the Democratic Party is not something they are happy about. The Director of External Affairs for Gen Z GOP expands on this, saying, quote, "There's an opportunity for expansion. If people are no longer content with identifying as Democrat, Democrats may not have all the policy solutions that Generation Z is looking for." It seems that the past 2 elections has left the youth of America rather disappointed in what world leaders and values each side of the political spectrum is pushing.
This is going to be my first ever presidential election. It's a very big one. This November, I'm unfortunately going to be voting for Biden and Kamala. That was not my first choice.
Do I choose this bitch she was incarcerated, so many people who look like me and the ones especially who don't look like me? Or do we go back to the Cheeto who has run this economy into the ground, has made sure to be as racist openly as possible, to have allowed a global pandemic to take over our lives when other countries are already returning back to normal?
So this begs the question, what is the future of partisanship in America? With each political party trying to appeal to Gen Z, will there be more of a political middle ground? It seems as if this generation, while still dealing with political divide, is starting to become more unified. 53% of Gen Z Republicans also believe that the government could do more to directly solve certain issues. The ideologies and Zers in each political party are becoming similar, with an emphasis on improving the government and the world. How is this possible? Social media may be the answer. Growing up in a world where there are multiple platforms to spew information in various forms of media at lightning-fast speeds creates a world where ideas can quickly become universal knowledge. It's easy to influence entire generations' view on a topic or public figure this way. Katie Foster, a right-leaning college student in South Dakota, stated, "Social media has the ability to take out a snippet of an entire presidential speech and give you 30 seconds to 2 minutes that can completely sway someone's opinion on a candidate." While being easily influenced by the information being spread across social media can be problematic, maybe it could become a useful tool in unifying the next generation of leaders in a divided country. With the right motivations and a focus on sharing truthful information, maybe social media can help Gen Z create a better political party system that can unify a country suffering from political unrest. Lately, it feels like the world is weighing heavily on our shoulders, like a weighted blanket. But instead of shielding you from anxiety, it's like a caged arena where anxiety beats the crap out of you. Between online school, the impending countdown of climate change, the joke of an election, and the pandemic, I think it's safe to say, bro, Gen Z fucking lives. Let's talk about mental illness issues Gen Z has had to face. Despite Claire's great one-on-one date that promoted how helpful therapy isn't accessible for everyone, and COVID limits accessibility for mental health services even more. The annual Stress in America survey, which collects data from people across all demographics of age, race, gender, sexuality, they found that the environment in which young people are being shaped in preparation for adulthood is making them increasingly more anxious and depressed. But this begs the question of why is it that this new generation is having so much difficulty with the world ending? Uncle Sam would say, pull yourself up from the bootstraps. Oh, and join a war or something. But I digress. Bay Area psychologist and gerontologist Kate Ditchwald hypothesized this.
The uncertainty of a job path, the uncertainty of the gig economy, flying through your life without certain benefits, the absence of savings.
Seniors said they're more worried about Alzheimer's than getting infected with COVID-19. Those in their teens through their 30s say the pandemic has caused a mental health decline. 37% among Gen Z, 27% of millennials, but only 15% of boomers and 8% of the silent generation.
We don't realize that some of the most valuable assets to have within oneself is maturity, is perspective, a little bit of wisdom, and most definitely resilience.
Thanks, Ken. I hope Barbie is doing well in her mansion with her thousands of jobs to support you and her. Ken highlights a good point, though. It's not just the present getting our panties in a bunch, but the promise or lack of our future. COVID also brought alcohol, drugs, and Animal Crossing into my life. Despite Isabel being an amazing addition to my role model list, nearly 8 in 10 of Gen Zers state that the future of their nation causes them stress, adversely affected by the rise of far-right politics. 62% are stressed by rising suicide rates. Information is at our fingertips, but it's all so exhausting. Even with the 3 a.m. dopamine searches on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever social media platform of the night you choose to jack off to at 3 in the morning, the combination of infographics, fake Ray-Ban promotionals, and the occasional funny 4-panel comic is all so overwhelming. Professor Emma Adams stated that we must work to provide social, emotional, and mental health support to this generation while providing much-needed financial assistance and educational work opportunities for youth. Both comfort now and hope for the future are essential for a long-term well-being of this generation. I need comfort, Professor Emma. I'm still somehow a student of pandemic. Animal Crossing is slowly losing its appeal. I said what I said, America. and I can't even fit into my Primark sweatpants anymore. All I wanted for the holidays is a weighted blanket and a Switch so I can play the Chaotic Goose Game. I just want to play the Chaotic Goose Game. It used to be that when you step on a crack, you break your mama's back. But in the year 2020, Gingy has realized that there are far too many cracks to avoid along the broken sidewalk that is America. Thanks to the pandemic and thanks to this rundown country we all inherited, all these cracks have been further revealed, showcasing the broken system that is the United States. But is there still a chance to fill in these cracks in the pavement? Could the Gen Z generation finally be the ones to mend our broken down society? Well, maybe. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. After all, the well-being of a generation needs to be tended to before we decide to go full-on YA novel Maze Runner rebellion mode. So before we decide to summon our Newts and Minhos, those are Maze Runner references for you 5 gladers out there, what methods are recommended to benefit ourselves and those around us?
I would certainly never think that there's something good about a pandemic. However, I do think that people recognizing that a lot of people's mental health is not okay and being willing to talk about it is something that we've been working for.
Now, Michelle is 100% correct. And while we shouldn't relish in the fact that none of our mental health is okay, it is nice to know that nobody's alone during this dreaded period in life. It may be comforting for some to know that many, to nearly all of us, aren't living our golden years right now, and that's okay. After all, there's a reason musicians like Elliott Smith and Radiohead are loved by nearly everybody at Emerson College. Sometimes all we want is to wallow in our own self-misery, and if the darkness found through Simon Garfunkel's lyrics or the beauty found through Jake Paul's new hit single makes you feel better, then God damn it, don't let anyone stop you. But are there any actual steps or methods that should be taken to help out Gen Z generation? Well, to those dealing with their own mental health issues, it's rather difficult to fix any problems by yourself. Most of the time, you need someone by your side, being your support system throughout the worst and most difficult times. Because of that, this now goes out to all the mommies, mommy bloggers, dance moms, supportive dads, and teachers for all ages. You need to be there to engage with your students and children sometimes. Sometimes all one needs is to feel a little bit better is just a sense of validation and appreciation. No, you won't be able to solve all their problems, but you most certainly can be there throughout their journey, even if it's not an adventurous one. But if none of this happens to work, always know that they can find solace through the welcoming presence of the internet. This way, you don't have to do any of the work yourself. Just have them visit the wondrous election distractor brought to us by our good friends at the New York Times. Good thing is that the little fucker lost. October and November mark for many Americans the sights and smells of fall and Halloween. But for the Mexican community, though, it marks a day of remembrance in the form of the Day of the Dead. The holiday dates back 3,000 years ago by rituals by Mesoamerican communities like the Aztecs of the Naha. The celebration was based on the belief system of life being cyclical and death being an unavoidable part of it. In other words, what your friend who buys spirituality books that he never reads was saying on acid the other night. But you know, real. Well, on the day itself, ofrendas, or a table with offerings and pieces of remembrance, are made in order to make a spiritual bridge to past ancestors. I think it's pretty obvious that the holiday is a pure and beautiful expression of not only Mexican heritage, but also people we have lost, which makes it a true shame that the Trump administration totally spit in its face.
Hello, this is Maria Espinoza. I'm National Director and co-founder of the Remembrance Project. I'd like to thank President Donald Trump for officially proclaiming the first Sunday in November as the National Day of Remembrance for Americans killed by illegal aliens.
Yes, on the 30th, before we knew his fate, our favorite Mexican-loving president made an official White House press release to declare November 1st, El Día de los Inocentes, or the Day of the Children, to be a national day of remembrance. Now, stepping on the toes of a specifically Mexican holiday seems on brand for Trump. By that I mean totally rude and borderline evil, but honestly, what else is new? Well, I can tell you, who is this day of remembrance for? It's for Americans killed by illegal aliens. This isn't just beating a dead horse, folks. This is beating a dead horse after it's been cremated, put into an urn, and then accidentally dropped on the floor. They really beat that horse. Trump has sent the Mexican community so far back, it's truly hard to believe. Take this recent Fox News article detailing how Americans are still somehow unaware of the problem that is illegal immigration. What? I've had 4 years of some of the most alarming and horrid news about how our government treats immigrants. And they've treated them so poorly, and then you have the audacity to write that illegal immigration is unknown, like it's something we should be upset about. Well, guess what? I'm not. And all immigrants who are trying to better themselves in America deserve respect no matter how they got here. What's worse is that these so-called angel families, like Marianne Mendoza, whose son was hit and killed by a drunk driver who also happened to be an illegal immigrant, are so incredibly appreciative of these racist actions. Mendoza's son's death is horrible. No discussion there. But to say that is more of an issue on immigration and not drunk driving is so racist, I don't even think it can be argued. So let me put it one way. We all know where your motives lie. Luckily, many bit back on Twitter. User Buddy Hinton said, quote, "Finally, a holiday for the people that were here first," and attached this picture. Nice. So what can we do from here on? Well, let's lay out the facts. This January, Trump will be out of office, and there is hope that enough people will be aware of this shitty holiday that Biden will just kill it off. But who knows? He might have been on a Dairy Queen run while this was all getting enacted, so then what? As corny as every Instagram infographic sounds, we have to hold him accountable, and we have to make sure he does it. All the while treating immigrants from all walks of life with love and respect, something our government has been failing to give them forever. So with that, and all my love and respect, I want to thank you for watching the Timeline this semester. I'm Amogh Matthews, and for the final time, have a good night, Boston.